And welcome back to the 50/50 podcast presented by Physical Athletics, our proud partners, Physical Athletics. You can find them on all social media platforms at Physical Athletic. That's FYZICAL Athletic. And you can also find them on their website at physicalathletics.com. So, welcome, a very, very special episode. This is our Inside Texas High School, or let me rephrase that, Inside hashtag TXHSSOC for Texas High School Soccer. The playoffs, inside the Texas High School Soccer State playoffs. We have a very special guest, a friend of mine, Coach Rafa Castorena. He is, you can also find him, I'll let him introduce himself, where you can find him. He's doing some fabulous things, and where he's a former Texas high school soccer coach as well, current club coach. He knows the game, knows what he's talking about, especially as it relates to high school soccer. And we're lucky to have him. Rafa, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great. So the first thing I want to ask you, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
First thing I got to ask right off the bat. So tell me a little bit about this this Twitter handle, this at Papa Socceritis. I love it,
Yeah.
but I want to hear a background story on this.
The background story from it is I got it from a band from Sweden. I'm into rock music, and the persona of the singer, his real name is Papa Emeritus, and I kind of thought, you know what, maybe I kind of play with it with the soccer stuff, because I had another Twitter handle, and I was remember telling Harry, you know what, I'm gonna change it up, and so that's how I got this. You know what? I'm gonna do like a Latin version of soccer. So I'm gonna put Papa Socceritis. I think that flows with it. So I know Harry gets a kick out of that. So that's the background on my Twitter handle.
All right, awesome. And Coach, for our listeners, the ones that are wondering, all right, who's this Papa Socceritis guy? Tell us a little bit more about San Antonio Soccer Roundtable, what you do for them, and then if you can, expand a little bit on your background as a Texas high school soccer coach.
Well, for the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable, because you can find us also, like I said, on Twitter, SATX Soccer. We usually do shows on Mondays, sometimes maybe Wednesdays, but mostly it's on Mondays about 7 p.m. Our focus is to showcase San Antonio soccer from the kids level, like the club soccer, all the way to San Antonio FC. As you can see, I have the SAFC flag behind me, and then we also talk about little things like a USL as a whole, but mostly it's a focus on, we want to showcase our talent, whether it's the pros, the semi-pros, the colleges, high schools, the clubs. It's all about San Antonio soccer, and so we're proud to be one of the top podcasts for that, to showcase all that talent. So we're proud of that, and right now we're, like I said, in the middle of the high school playoffs. That's exciting for us. We had a big show. I know you came on the show last week. We got a good 3 hour show.
Yeah.
So that was fun. So
yeah,
I think we got a lot of positive feedbacks.
Needed some endurance for that show.
Yeah, I think we all needed our Bang Energy or a Red Bull for that one.
Yeah. Speaking of which, here's a little plug right there. Huh? Bang Energy drinks.
I like the Pina Colada one. That's my favorite one.
Yeah, no, I'm cherry blade lemonade right now. That's what I got going on here. So it's one of the few times it used to be my vice, energy drinks, and I was doing great, actually, believe it or not, during the pandemic until the soccer season started. and then it was like full steam ahead again. Actually mainly just on game days. And then and I've dialed it down again quite a bit. Now it's just whenever we're doing a recording for the podcast. So at least so I tell myself, and my wife continues to remind me. So, all right, Coach. So tell us a little bit more. Obviously, you have a pretty extensive background in the game, coaching the game, and also part of that is being a high school soccer coach here in the state of Texas. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm originally from Del Rio, Texas. That's my hometown. I was military brat. Dad was in the Air Force, so we settled there, and I started coaching around 18. Started out coaching my youngest brother's team, and first year we ended up winning the Western District title for Division III soccer, and then 20 years later, still coaching. Then I got into high school soccer, got to coach my alma mater. I was part of that program for a good 7 years, won a couple of district titles, won playoffs, and then took a year off. There's some things, things happen, but then now I work for the University of Houston, Victoria. That's my main job now. I do student recruitment for Central and West Texas. So I do cover El Paso as well.
Right.
And then I went to a friend of a mutual friend went to a tryout for Club America when they had their academy in San Antonio. And I asked her, hey, do you guys need a coach? I said, sure, we need one. We need one for U10. And 10 years later, it said nothing but success, coaching club soccer. Actually, I had five of the boys that started with me, stayed with me all the way to their senior year. So I'm very, very proud of that. And
awesome.
Proud, great parents support. And I know we changed. I also got to coach with Texans for a while. Then I switched over we did a little independent, and then we switched over to EME, which is part of Mission City Soccer. They're in south side of San Antonio, and we just had a lot of success with coaching those kids, and probably had the best group of boys that can ever coach. Very coachable, loving them to death. Now they're all some are about to actually graduate. A lot of them graduated last year. A couple of them are graduating this year, but they're doing great things. One thing about those kids, kind of being like a big brother to them, making sure they stay out of trouble. A lot of them are going to school. Some doing really well academically. I had a couple of them get academic full ride scholarships, and so I couldn't be more proud of that. But it's fun. Like I said, I do have as far as my background list, I do have a USF National D license, National Youth license, and now the United Soccer Coaches the level 3 goalkeeping license. So hopefully I can get an opportunity to do the C license in the future.
Absolutely. That's awesome. That's a great insight. So in case we're wondering who we're talking to and his background covering the game at multiple levels, especially being a former Texas high school soccer coach, now our listeners have a better idea. And I'm excited to announce that this is going to kind of be a little, maybe 4-part series over the next couple of weekends. So we're excited to have you on here, Coach.
Thank you.
And what we may do is in one of the next episodes, maybe have you dive in a little bit more into your job as a student recruiter for the University of Houston, Victoria. So for some of our listeners across the state, or really even nationally, so they kind of have an idea. You can tell us a little bit more about that campus, about that school.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to dive right in, Coach. So what are your initial thoughts on a very wild opening by district round this past Thursday and Friday across the state of Texas?
There are some shockers out there. There are some teams that we normally know that are perennial powers that have won state championships or at least are contenders every year, get knocked off in the first round. That was a surprise. And that was in quite a few of the regions out there. But it comes to show that, you do need to come out and be ready to play. That's something I remember when I coached high school. Even in club, you said you always got to be prepared for any opponent. You can't take them for granted, whether they're a 1 seed, 4 seed, 3 seed, 2 seed. It don't matter. If they made the playoffs, they made it for a reason, And so a lot of shockers out there from this past weekend.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think there was probably, I don't know. It's tough because we don't want to. I mean, we could stay here probably for a couple of hours to discuss. There was probably at least easily dozen to maybe 15 kind of really eye-opening results. But if you could, Coach, maybe hit on maybe one or two, regardless of classification. Pick the classification you like. Doesn't matter whether from 4A to 6A. But maybe one or two on the boys' side and maybe one or two on the girls' side that got your attention.
The one that got my attention was for 6A boys Region 1 was the Allen game versus Flowermont, which Flowermont was still considered technically the defending state champions because we didn't have a state champion the last year.
Right.
That was a surprise there, and I thought I knew that game could have gone either way, but the way Allen beat them, they beat them 4-1. That was a surprise. Even in Region 4, I think the big surprise was was the 6A boys was Reagan falling down in penalty kicks to the Broncos. Reagan had been, I know they started sluggish in the beginning of the year, but once they got to district, they were probably one of the hottest teams here in the region Region 4. And I thought they were like, okay, this is one team you probably don't want to play because they're peaking at the right time. But I think the Broncos caught them on the right, at a bad night, and ended their season on the last penalty kick.
Right. And again, that was the Region 4 6A matchup between San Antonio Reagan and the New Braunfels. One of my favorite mascots, the New Braunfels Unicorns. Right, you gotta love that. It's my daughter's favorite. All right, so yeah, I think it kind of goes without saying. So I am going to throw one at you that we kind of got a shout out, kind of a question right before we went on air. And that was at Mr. Bowtie 1982. He was talking about that score between San Antonio Clark and Clements that ended in 8-0 8-0 final. I don't know if anybody quite saw that coming. Maybe some people would say they did, but I don't know. In a state playoff 6A, that's pretty tough to see happening, I think. What were your thoughts on that one?
That one was a surprise because I know I've had those. We have a top 10 there for this. For the roundtable, we do it almost every show, and I had mostly Clark was pretty much there the whole year. Clemens, they would come in and out, but that I can tell you that District 28 6A for the girls, that's probably one of the toughest districts in the state. You got about maybe 7 caliber teams that can make the playoffs.
Right.
And then I think Clark was just battle tested, and to put 8 goals on Clemens was a shock. And I'm sure the next game for Clark, which is I think it's going to be. I'm trying to looking at my little sheet here. I think they're going to play Round Rock. I think Round Rock better look out and not take them lightly. If Clark can win this next game, you can consider them a contender. I know. We have Lake Travis and also Steele on the other end of that bracket.
Right.
So they cannot take Clark lightly if they get past Round Rock in the next round. So they're now a dark horse in this playoffs for the 6A girls for Region 4.
Yeah, and I mean, you're so spot on with the District 28 6A in women's soccer. It's just, I mean, it's murderer's row. You had, excuse me, a couple episodes back we had Coach Eric Stolhansky from Lee, right? And also shout out to my buddy, the Boz, Coach Boswell, his assistant there at Lee. A team of that caliber, and they came up short, weren't able to qualify for the playoffs. That's such an eye opener with a team that's that good. And obviously, this is a tough year across the board to gauge in terms of COVID and then injuries on top of that. Yeah, everybody has to deal with that, but some more than others. But it just kind of speaks to when I see certain teams like that. It just speaks to the quality, the depth, the strength of the district. So whenever some people are filling out their brackets, and this is something that we discussed back on Wednesday on the SA Soccer Roundtable, is that you can't just go chalk on these brackets, right? You can't just say the winner of one district, the number 1 seed, is playing a 4 seed in the bi-district round, so therefore it's going to be the number 1 seed all day. It's going to be the number 2 seed over the number 3 seeds, because I think, as we all know, or we need to be reminded, is that not all districts are the same. Not all districts are equal. That's for sure. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit more, some Region 4 and some Region 1 talk, Coach. I know you hit on some of it already, but is there any, what are your thoughts on those, Region 4 being the greater San Antonio and Austin area, South Texas area, and then Region 1 being the North Texas, the Plains, and then way out here where I am, out in far West Texas, El Paso. What were your thoughts on this bi-district weekend for Region 1, Region 4. All right, Coach, I know you hit on it a little bit not too long ago in terms of some highlighting a couple of matchups within Region 4 and Region 1, but let's dive in maybe a little bit more as it pertains to Region 4, because I know that's the bread and butter. That's what you deal with every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're very familiar with where I'm at as well, and you can throw things my way a little bit as far as Region 1 goes as well. Let's talk a little bit some Region 4, some Region 1 talk. What are your thoughts on that? Not only from the by-district round, but now going into going into the area round.
Well, one other surprise, like we mentioned about the Clark Clemens game, there was another surprise, and you mentioned touched on about the seeding. Um, the Johnson girls defeated the Spencer Valley girls in PKs, and I had Spencer Valley as my top team in our top 10. They hadn't lost the whole year, and maybe everybody favored Spencer Valley to maybe go through and get maybe to the third round, maybe a showdown with hope possibly with Reagan, and nobody saw it coming that the Johnson girls would pull off the upset. So that was a surprise for Region 4 on the girls side. But I think everything else kind of came through. I was at attendance at the Taft and Del Rio game. Del Rio kind of surprised them. They're taking the lead, and kind of was amused to see that they started parking the bus a little too early, and but Taft just kept on going, and they got a big victory. I think the only team from 36A that got a victory was Alexander, and that was a little surprise because they only won 1-0, and it just showed that John Jay gave them a really good game. So that could have gone either way. Now on the boys' side, I think the other shocker was like I said, the Reagan boys losing to New Braunfels in penalty kicks, and that was a surprise there. I think one of the key games also for the Austin area was Westlake and Vandergrift. That was like a rematch from a previous game, like a preseason game, and Vandergrift was able to get the winner there at Westlake, and so that sets up a showdown for an area round with the San Antonio Lee, which is our words. Probably is my favorite to win the Region 4 boys for 6A. The game's going to be at Comelander Stadium, and I know they faced once before. Vandergrift got the best of them, beating them 4-0, but I have a feeling I think Lee's going to get, they're focused, they're ready. I think they want a little payback, and it's going to be an exciting game on Tuesday night. They're at Comelander at 8.
Yeah, very two different those you can argue that obviously along with Vandy that San Antonio Lee is also, I mean, both teams very different. It's hard to compare an early season non-district January match versus a late March / early April state playoff match for sure. So, and I know Lee's definitely found themselves, and their pedigree kind of speaks for itself. And but yeah, it should be an incredible matchup. I actually have that on the boys' side. I have that, and for me personally, on the boys' side, there's two matchups. That's probably one, and then the other one that's 1A. It's going to take place also on Tuesday out at Lubbock Christian University. I know you and I were speaking about it, which is going to be the South Lake Carroll versus El Paso East Lake matchup. That should also be a very, very good matchup. So looking forward to those, I should say. So yeah, so we've talked, you've mentioned some shockers or some, maybe some results, but what would you say when you look back on it, non-6A, what were maybe some of the top results or top kind of eye openers, if for lack of better words, if we don't want to use the word shocker or upset, maybe in the lower classification brackets in 4A and 5A, are there any that come to mind?
Actually, for 5A girls here in San Antonio, the one that was real eye-opening was Floresville defeating Jefferson. Jefferson had ran the gauntlet through their district, 27 5A, went undefeated in their district, had 20 wins, and I really expected them to, take care of business this game. I know in the area round was probably going to be their first true test, but when I saw the results of that, I was very surprised about that. The Footersville was able to knock them off. Also in the 5A girls, we had a couple powerhouses early on. Cedar Park versus Alamo Heights.
Yeah.
That game can go either way, but Cedar Park was able to knock them off. Um, in that game. And as far as the boys side, there was a couple of them. Actually, the Alamo Heights boys also lost to Eastview, and that was going to back and forth. I did get some info on that. Alamo Heights was down 4 starters because of injuries, so that could have affected a little bit of the result. But I'll give credit to Eastview. Like I said, they're a good team. They've made it to the state tournament in the past, and they got a good. They got a showdown with Southwest, who was our number one and for 5A rankings, and this is probably going to be the true test for the Southwest boys. Uh, I'm not too, as far as their district, I'm not very convinced it's a very strong district, and this could be that one game that you know I guess got to point out so this you could still could see an upset here. I think District 25 5A is a little bit more stacked compared to 28 5A as far as kind of running the gauntlet through that district. And then you got the Valley. Actually, last night yesterday afternoon I got to see Sherryland and Bronzo Lopez. Lopez was about to win that game, but Sherryland came back and won in a double overtime. So you got to watch out for them. You got Bronzo Porter. So a lot of the teams that we did predict for 5A, they're most of them are moving on. Valley View, I think that's one of my dark horses there that will go through. We also have Dripping Springs. Like I said, they got a good pedigree as far as playing. And then 4A girls, I think right now the advantage is the Dripping Spring girls have a good shot, but don't sleep on McAllen. I think the McAllen girls. I know a couple years ago they shocked the 6A going to state. I think they were the first Valley team from the to make the state tournament in 6A. So don't sleep on the 5A girls from McAllen. I think they may be a contender to get into the state tournament.
Yeah, I remember that. I think that was that 2018, 2017?
I think so.
I think that was somewhere. Yeah, I do remember that because I remember catching part of that game there. I think that regional final at Blossom. Yeah, so there's the one team down in that area that I'm really big on, and I know we mentioned it. We talked about it last week on the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. The Juarez Lincoln, right?
Yes.
That's a very special group. And you hit on Dripping Springs. Both of their sides, right? Both their boys and girls, and their girls. That's another brutal district. That the girls play in, and it's pretty incredible. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what how these matchups are looking, and sometimes a little bit is obviously in your run to state you have to. Obviously you have to be good, but it also helps when you get a little lucky along the way. That's what things kind of fall your way a little bit. So that'll be very interesting.
Yeah, one interesting matchup I do see for the 6A boys from the Valley is going to be actually the Harlan boys from San Antonio playing Harlingen South. Did catch the Harlingen South game last night. They struggled, and I saw the style of play. They were forcing balls, trying to play a lot of the long ball. They got lucky to take it to overtime and then got the winner. And I think the second overtime, a little long ball. They cannot play that way against Harlan. Harlan's a good possession team. I know Harlan got a little wake up call against Laura United South because they were down, but they were able to pull that off.
Right.
So that's one of the interesting matchups from down in the Valley. You have, like I said, Los Fresnos boys also kind of got a little wake up call too. So a lot of the teams that got put on kind of thought they were going to get a little cakewalk in the first round. A lot of them got little wake up calls that, hey, we need to get serious come the second round because there's some good second round matchups coming up.
So we're taking some not live, obviously. We're not live here, but we're taking some questions, thoughts on live on Twitter right now as we're recording this. and your partner in crime there, Harry at Ram in Call at what RAMINCOL Ram in Colorado, short for Ram in Colorado. He put something out there. He said, "Do we want to talk about your brackets?" LOL.
I think he mentioned to me today that I had a lot of green than red.
Yeah.
So I know he mentioned that to me this morning. It's like, hey, it didn't look too bad. So you know, I think it's tough to for especially like regions that maybe we don't know, like 2 and 3, since we're not in those areas. Sometimes you do go based on maybe if they've made like runs to state or have a good history path as far as their team, the tradition and so forth. You kind of go that way as far as picking the teams.
Right.
But like I said, you can never know, you know, who, anything can happen. I've seen it even in a state championship. I think back in 2003 or four, we had a top ranked, nationally ranked Capel boys thinking they're gonna walk all over Brownsville Porter, and Porter pulls off the upset. So, like I said, anything, like I said, anything can happen. But we try our best to see what we can predict, and so I'm kind of glad I'm on the positive side for this.
Yeah, it's tough.
For this week.
It's tough. Yeah, for sure. I know. Talking a little bit of Region 1 out here, my neck of the woods out here in El Paso, we had a couple of district champions or co-district champions, to be fair, that went down right off the bat and by district, because the districts are they're so well balanced out here. And then probably our two, or not probably, for sure, what are our two hottest teams out here in El Paso, which both happen to be on the girls' side. At the 6A, you have El Paso Franklin. I was actually covering that match on Friday. They defeated Midland Lee 2-0 in that was a very interesting matchup. I mean, those two goals for Franklin came in about the first 15 minutes of the first half, and then it kind of turned into a pretty tight, tough, highly intense physical match. Especially on Midland Lee did have some opportunities. They had one. They had one that went one shot that went right off the edge of the right post. I mean, probably 2 inches to the left, and it goes in, which would have changed everything, obviously. But yeah, so you have that. So they'll move on. El Paso Franklin will move on, and they'll be playing Eaton they're in the second round in San Angelo, I believe, at Old Bobcat Stadium there. And then Jefferson, the 5A girls, they are not, I think, either, don't quote me on this, it's either their 12th or 13th consecutive win, and they advanced as well. So, and I would have to double check who they're playing next. I gotta double check that, verify. But yeah, it's interesting. Just pretty well balanced out here, and I think they were trying to look into it, but I don't know if it had ever happened before. But all the 6A, so all 4 seeds, the 1 through 4 seed for the El Paso boys schools at the 6A level, they all advanced, which nobody could really recall if that's ever happened before. So they were trying to verify that. So pretty good results for the El Paso schools out here. And obviously they'll El Paso schools, they're used to, one of the things they pride themselves is on travel. They got those frequent flyer miles, so yeah, so they'll be ready. They'll be going in Region 1, it's brutal. You got all roads point to DFW, and so you're inevitably going to have to travel. So all those teams will obviously take to the road, with the majority of them playing either in Lubbock, or if not in Midland on Tuesday. So, all right, Coach, we're going to transition here. We're going to start looking more towards this next coming week, the area round, and then maybe a little bit beyond that, just to what to expect. So stay with us. I know you're going to stay with us to discuss that. For our listeners, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a word from these sponsors. And welcome back to the 50/50 podcast, presented by Physical Athletics. our proud partners, Physical Athletics. You can find them on all social media platforms at Physical Athletic. That's FYZICAL Athletic, as well as their website at physicalathletics.com. All right, so we're back with Coach Rafa. You can find him on Twitter at Papa Socceritis, right? And also he is he's one of the co-hosts for the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable, and you can find them also on Twitter at SATX Soccer. Again, that's at SATX Soccer, as well as his co-host and who's already contributed to the show today, Harry, which you can find him at RAMINCOL. Excuse me. So, all right, Coach. So, looking forward now. So, I know of at least one matchup on Monday. I know the overwhelming majority will obviously be on Tuesday. I know it's going to be Bernie. I know the Bernie girls and Coach Kara Walters, who's a 50-50 pod alum. So shout out to her. I know they are going to be playing on Monday. I'm trying to recall who they're playing. Do you know that off the top of your head, Coach?
That one I'm not sure. I don't know if it was one of the Austin area teams or it could be one of the Coastal Bend teams. I'm not too sure. I can double
Yeah, I'm
check.
verifying that right now. It's Floresville. Floresville beat Jefferson. That's why I couldn't remember.
Is that the champion or the Bernie champion or Bernie High?
No, Bernie champion, I should say. Sorry. Okay. Bernie champion. Yeah, that one is Monday, March 29th, 7 p.m. Central Time at Dub Fair. They're at Dub Ferris, Northside Complex.
Right in my backyard.
Yeah. So I know I think I came across at least maybe one or two that it was floating around that they were going to be on Monday, but off the top of my head, right, that I know of right now, that's the only Monday. I know that's not going to be the only one, but right now, off the top of my head, that's the only Monday night matchup I've seen so far. So, give us a little bit. So as we look forward to the area round, which for the most part, overwhelmingly will take place on Tuesday. Let's go through a couple of regions. We can start there in your backyard in Region 4 if you like. Give us kind of what you think the top one or two matchups in each region for each. We'll start with the boys that you kind of have when you look at all the regions and you kind of go region by region. Maybe give us the one or two matchups in each region that you're liking, that you're going to kind of really keep a close eye on.
Well, the big ones, like I said, is Tuesday night. The Lee and Vandergrift boys 6A. That's I'm probably going to be at that game, and I wish they had played that game at Toyota. I think they should have played that game at Toyota Field, not at they're at Comalander.
That'd be nice.
That'd be nice. I think the atmosphere, or you would have gotten a real soccer atmosphere there. I know the Leaf fans. They come out to the games. They get crazy. They support their team. So that's one of the games I'm looking forward to. I know a couple other games coming up. My Lincoln, like you mentioned, Lincoln Juarez, Juarez Lincoln. They got actually a matchup with my former alma mater. Who I actually saw them play on Friday. I think Lincoln Juarez is just Juarez Lakers they're just out of class on their own, and I think those shows should take care of business.
Pretty special group. Yeah. Who and for our listeners, who are they playing? What time and where? Do you have any details?
They're playing Del Rio on Tuesday in Laredo. Okay. I think at the Student Activity Center for United ISD. So that's I think it's 6 o'clock, 6 or 7 o'clock.
Okay. All right. Anyone else in the other regions that you want to highlight on the boys' side when you look across 1, 2, and 3?
I know for 5A, and I'm just kind of raising through my little brackets. Like I said, Southwest versus Eastview. That's an intriguing game there.
Yeah.
And Southwest has to travel to Georgetown, and actually is going to be where the field where they have the state championship at.
Oh, so that was announced. That's going to be at they're at Birkelbach Field, huh?
Field, yeah. So they're gonna have to travel, and this is probably gonna be their first test.
Yeah.
And if they can get by these guys, and they'll have another test. But I think that's gonna build confidence for their boys team. Another couple games coming up. Cedar Park and Lanier. Um, First time winning district championship since 1985.
That's awesome.
They want
That's
to play
awesome.
out. They're awesome for those boys. So congrats. They have a tough one. They got Cedar Park. It's gonna be. I think that game's probably gonna be. I think on Alamo Stadium. I got to double check on that, but that should be another good game. And then another one down the valley, we have Veterans Memorial from Brownsville versus Flower Bluff. That's going to be a tough game too, as well. But I'm going to give the edge for Veterans Memorial. I think they should pull out the win for 5A boys.
Yeah.
And then for 4A, just to mention the 4A, a couple of games coming up. We have Fredericksburg versus Pleasanton. That's going to be a good one for 4A boys. We also have Hidalgo from the Valley. I think they're probably my favorite to get out of the region.
Right.
Maybe contend against Bernie High. So I think Hidalgo has. Yeah, they got Rio Grande City Grula in that second round game.
Okay. Good. All right. Now what about when you look at it, same thing kind of on the girl. Oh, actually, before we transition to the girls, one thing that I did want to mention, and for our listeners, kind of a shout out to Texas Soccer Journal. You can find them on Twitter at TX Soccer Journal. They kind of did up a good story or tweeted out a good story that was covered by the Reporter News there out of Abilene. Kind of a shout out. They did a nice little piece, a shout out to Snyder High School, who, school that's just in its third year of existence in a, pretty rural area there in Snyder. And they captured their first high school playoff victory in school history. And so obviously some other schools have done that this year or recently. But what's significant about that story is, for those of you, there's a lot of people that really don't necessarily know where Snyder, Texas is. You're talking about an hour west of Abilene, and very rural area, pretty rural area, but it kind of highlights and it speaks to the power and the growth of the sport here in Texas, right? So not only do they, it's, like we said, it's a program that's very much in its infancy, still in year 3, and already making the playoffs and capturing their first playoff victory. So, shout out to Texas Soccer Journal for covering that story, and a shout out to Snyder High School for capturing their first playoff victory. So kudos to them. Great job, boys. All right, Coach. So now on the girls' side, when we go across the regions, what are some matchups? What are some games you have your eye on?
The ones I have on is, I know we have a couple big ones on. I know it's for 6A girls. I'm just gonna pulling up. Should be pulling up pretty soon. I know they haven't updated yet for the UIL. I wish they would do it pretty sooner.
Right.
I think we have. I think Reagan versus Vandergrift. I think that's actually that game is gonna be at 6:00. They're at Comalander as well, right before the league game. Johnson versus I think is Austin Westlake. I know Westlake's probably going to be the favorite, but Johnson could pull another upset. Then that could happen. So that's an interesting game there for. And then I know we have one district in San Antonio, which is 29 6A. They have the kind of, like I said, the easier, kind of maybe the easier path to get into regionals. You have Brennan versus United from Laredo. I think the Brennan girls should take care of business there. Actually, they did win that game. Actually, Brennan versus Harlingen. That's going to be a good game, but I got to give the edge to Brennan on that one. We also have Vela versus Taft. That can go either way. And then we have a couple other ones coming down. Lake Travis, the favorite for Region 4. They got a showdown with Steel. They can't take lightly Steel Lady Steel Knights. This will be a good game. And we also have Clark going up against Ron Rock. I think it was Ron Rock, Westwood, I believe. I was trying to see, Ron Rock High. So that should be
Mm-hmm.
another one. Like I said, Ron Rock can't take Clark lightly after that 8-0 win.
Yeah, yeah.
And so good matchups except for for 6A girls. For 5A, I know some of the teams Austin's had kind of like the best of the San Antonio teams. We have the Southwest girls hosting Cedar Park, but I'm giving the edge to Cedar Park for that girls game. Uh, I think Bernie Champion should take care of business with Floresville. Uh, an interesting matchup: McAllen Memorial versus Corpus Christi Veterans Memorial. That's going to be a good game.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give that one to Vets Memorial from Corpus. I'll give them an edge. And then McAllen versus Victoria West. I think McAllen should take care of business and advance to the next round for
Right.
that. And then we have the Dripping Springs, Harlandale. The one team that might be the dark horse for 5A is Liberty Hill. When I saw some video on them, those girls are dynamite.
I remember
And
it was, that was, if you recall, that was the one that I was pretty big on back on Wednesday. They had one goal that they posted from their by district matchup that was like a 30-yard upper 90 screamer. I don't know. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. Yeah, but and the big thing, what a lot of people are trying to gauge with Liberty Hill is, hey, this is their first year in 5A. How are they going to adapt? How are they going to adjust? And so we'll see. I mean, they're adjusting pretty well so far, right? So, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100% on that. And then you mentioned Steel versus Lake Travis there. And, that one's, full disclosure for the 50/50 podcast, we're big on, big some supporters of the podcast. You have, Lake Travis, obviously their program, really good supporters of the podcast, and we appreciate that. So you have them going up against, a really good, kind of still underrated Steel team, I think. And they have one of the top scorers there in the city in San Antonio, the greater San Antonio area. I want to make sure I pronounce her name correctly, so forgive me if I don't, but it's Kalia Agel. She's a 2022 out of Shirts. Is it Shirts or no? It's Cibolo. Sorry, Cibolo Steel High School. They're in the greater San Antonio area. So college coaches. She's had some incredible goals that she's posted this year as well, and one dynamite one against Clemens. So shout out to her. Shout out to Lake Travis. The Lake Travis women's soccer program as well. So selfishly, that one's going to be that one's going to be tough for us here at the 50/50 podcast to root for more for one versus the other, but we wish them both the best as well. So, Coach, now when you look at, I know you covered Region 4 there, but on the girls' side, are there maybe one or two when you look at the other regions that regions 1, 2, and 3 that stand out to you that really pique your interest?
Yeah, well, Region 1 is a good standout because I think maybe the Franklin girls, maybe this is their year to break out and get that second round win and get into the third round. I think they're one of the sleeper teams out there, and I know they have that big game in San Angelo versus Eaton.
Mm-hmm.
I want to put past them if they knock them off. I think they have a good shot. If they play their game, control the tempo, so forth. Get on, score early. Don't be surprised if they advance to the regional quarterfinal round.
Yeah, and the winner of that, the winner of that matchup would set up a regional. The winner of that El Paso Franklin Eaton matchup would set up a regional quarterfinal versus the Odessa Permian South Lake Carroll winner. So you want to talk about a very tasty regional quarterfinal? That would be incredible. So yeah, no, I agree, completely agree with you. I'm sorry, go ahead there, Coach.
And then we also have Prosper. Yeah. I think they might be the favorite. I mean, they've been really. I know they had a test with the Capel girls, but I mean, right. Capel's. I mean, boys and girls, they have a great program.
Capel, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the name speaks for itself, but I think this could be the year for Prosper to get a little prosperous and get themselves a state title this year.
Right.
But they're gonna have to beat some quality teams in order to get to get to Georgetown.
Yeah, yeah, and it's no disrespect to any program whatsoever, but it is, when we talk about kind of getting lucky a little bit along the way, sometimes upsets happen and things kind of roll your way in terms of who you might play in the next round, but also sometimes just the draw of the tournament. Some teams might have it's not that some teams have an easy path, but some teams you can tell they just have a drastically harder path to try to make it to what normally would be the state the state tournament, right? The regional tournament and the state tournament. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But all right, coach. So that's talking now. So we've looked at our by district kind of by district results, a very very wild first round. We talked a little bit of some key matchups at the regional, or I'm sorry, at the area level on Tuesday, Monday, and Tuesday, and then we're not going to dive into too much more beyond that at this point. We'll talk about that more next week. But one of the things that we posted on the 50/50 podcast, posted on earlier today, is the Dallas Cup being scheduled right smack in the middle of the Texas high school soccer playoffs. And I just really, not enough people are, whatever you want to call it, griping, complaining, or just even talking about it, right? But the effect, it's hard to say that teams aren't going to be impacted either logistically or just have heavy legs for one of their playoff games, whether it be an area round matchup early in the week or a regional quarterfinal matchup at the end of the week, or worse yet, if you have some players that I'd like to think that they're not going to pick a club showcase game, sort of a club tournament game versus a over a high school state regional quarterfinal match. But that's I speak from experience. That's actually that's happened to me as a high school soccer coach. So it does happen, or it is going to be a possible issue. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are your thoughts on what to me seems like not enough people are talking about, of the possible impact, the effect that Dallas Cup is going to have on teams this week across the state?
Yeah. Well, with the Dallas Cup, I know it's probably one of the prestigious youth tournaments here, probably in the world too. I mean, they get international teams. I know they're not getting them this year,
Right.
but I think they should have been a little bit smarter about scheduling. You know, this in the middle of the high school seat, like in the playoffs, and uh, I think that this could have maybe waited a little bit longer. I think for me personally, the Dallas Cup should be played, like late May, maybe early June. That allow more teams to come, and especially now with the pandemic, now the more people are getting more of the vaccine and so forth. I think it would have been a lot better. You had a little more turnout to that, And then I did see a comment on Twitter about I think one parent mentioned, or somebody mentioned, that some of the club teams were not going to allow the kids to play in the high school playoffs. And to me, that's a shame. And that's, every kid wants to play for their high school team. It's about, pride, you're pride of your school,
Right.
and I think out of that, we all need to work together and compromise. But we also don't want to wear out the players too. We need to
Absolutely.
have a little more common sense about scheduling. Not putting down the Dallas Cup is not important, but so is that, I guess the high school playoffs are just as important as well. It's just find a meeting, like a good balance to say, okay, let's work things out. Let's get things like we can work around, so that way everybody's happy. I think that's something that needs to be discussed around, club coaches well, actually, club directors and the high school coaches in the future.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And speaking of which, kind of some updated information here. We were talking about other playoff matches that are scheduled to take place on Monday. So here it is confirmed. It'll actually be one of the teams that you were just discussing that a lot of people are very big on. The Prosper women's soccer, Prosper High School. They will be taking on Arlington High School this Monday, March 29th. That game is slated for 7:30 p.m. at Marcus High School. So that's another one that will not take place on Tuesday. and it'll actually take place on Monday. So, yeah, well said, Coach. I think in terms of governing bodies, your officials that put together the Dallas Cup, the Dallas Cup tournament, and maybe a little bit better of maybe some better collaboration there along with the UIL and school districts. It doesn't take a lot to kind of reach out and make some phone calls and get better ideas. So yeah, couldn't agree with you more on that. But ultimately, like you said, I think putting the health of it, no matter what, it's like what's best for the kids, right? What's best for the student athletes, and put their above all else is their health. So yeah, that's kind of exactly what I'm hinting at when I say that not enough people are talking about, because that could raise an issue later in the week, for sure. So, and then our last thing that we wanted to dive into before we go, Coach, is and you and we started to have this conversation a little bit offline after our big bracketology show back on Wednesday, when you all invited me on the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. But what's kind of getting all the news, all the real buzz, it seems like, is the fact that there will be no traditional state tournament this year, meaning that would be your both your semifinal and then your final on different days, on back-to-back days there in Georgetown at Birkelbach Field. And instead it will be only the final, only the championship matchups will take place there in Georgetown. But so that's kind of getting all the buzz, right? But
yeah.
Excuse me, but what doesn't seem to be getting nowhere near as much the amount of buzz or discussion in terms of just logistically the added travel, the impact that is going to have, is the fact that there are going to be no regional tournaments. Meaning, so normally the teams that qualify for the regional semifinals, they have a separate mini tournament, right, so to speak, which consists of the regional semifinal and the regional final. So all these four teams, they all go to one location and they have it out in back-to-back days, right? That is not going to happen this year, also because of, again, COVID. And I feel, we feel that is not being discussed enough. What are your thoughts on that in terms of the projected impact?
That's really going to affect as far as pulling students out of class. If you see some of the schedule out already, I saw games at 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, and or 4 p.m. and that's I've never really seen that before. So, and then now because of COVID-19 has really affected that. And I think the main thing is that they want the kids to come back home at a certain time. So, especially, I think the biggest one is Region 1. You're stretching out from the Metroplex all the way to El Paso. And so I feel for those kids, making those long drives. Being on a charter bus for 5 hours, going over to Lubbock or Midland, Odessa just to play a game, it can take a toll on you, and especially during midweek. I wish the UIL kind of really thought through this, maybe done the same format as like what they do with baseball and softball, and just have playoff games on the weekends. And I think that would have been a better situation. I guess, and the travel wouldn't be as much because it's on the weekends. Not worrying about waking up early and going to school, or logging in going to school, whichever the students are doing nowadays. So I think they really should have cut it through. But the biggest thing is not having a regional tournament. They're gonna have, there could be some scenarios that we're gonna have to travel some distances just to play a regional semifinal and then a regional final. And same thing with the state semifinal. So, like, for example, we'll have the regional. Let's say we have a team from El Paso win Region 1, and now they're gonna play a team from East Texas from Region 2. You got to play it during the middle of the week.
Right.
Where's the halfway point? So unless they flip home, that's another thing. Will they be flipping home and home? I know some coaches might want to have someone do like a 9-hour drive on a bus. So.
I was gonna say I don't know anybody that wants to do that versus a school from El Paso, right?
Yeah. So that's really gonna that could affect a lot of these teams. Going into these later rounds. Who's gonna be the quote unquote the road warrior? Who can handle the stress being on
Right.
the road, and then it's even being out during the week because the recovery time is not gonna be as much. A lot. I think I'm surprised there were not a lot of more games on Monday than on Tuesday, so that way they have a quick turnaround and play. Like I said, most of them are going to be playing on Fridays.
Right. Right.
So that's like I said, that's really gonna it's gonna be interesting to see our region, most the Valley and San Antonio, Austin, probably so like I said, it's gonna be interesting how these coaches plan as far as the halfway points and then the turnaround times is gonna that like I said that could affect you from getting into the state tournament. So I'm mean, state championship game. So we'll see what happens in this next few weeks.
Yeah, I've often found it interesting, and I was telling a friend this yesterday actually. What's always what I've always found and I mean I get it to a certain extent as to why in terms of logistically, but what I've always found interesting is you have all these schools across the state of Texas that they play right in the dead of winter, and they're playing Tuesday nights, Friday nights for the most part, right? In the dead of winter, in the cold, in the evening, and then they get to the state playoffs and they're playing these 11 a.m. games, noon kickoff games in the spring, and in some cases, there was one. Uh, some of our some of our schools, or one school in particular out here in El Paso, in speaking with a parent, they were talking about how they had to make that trip out to Odessa and how hot it actually was for their game and for a Friday morning game, and how hot it was, and they were just, and inevitably when you're that age, you're not going to make an excuse. You're not going to use it as the excuse. You're just going to play. But yeah, I do find it interesting that we play the entire season at a certain time of day, in the coldest part of the year, and then we get to the playoffs
Mhm.
and we're kind of all over the place. So yeah, it can be tough. It can be tough for sure. So
Yeah, that the weather, like I said, I think one perfect example was actually I actually had a friend of mine, my friend Steve, went to go see the Reagan game versus the New Braunfels boys, and he was mentioning a lot of them were cramping up,
right.
and especially if you play on turf, that's going to be a little worse with the heat,
Oh yeah.
taking effect on you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And I think, and speaking of which, um, I was trying to look it up right now just to verify, but it does look, I'm seeing early reports that weather, I don't know about maybe Tuesday's area round matchups, but
Hmm.
the regional quarterfinal matchups later in the week, looks like they might be affected by weather. So that's always a fun variable. So yeah, so we'll see what kind of impact that has in certain parts of the state for sure. So um, again, he is Coach Rafa Castorena, Coach Rafa, as I call him. You can find him on Twitter at Papa Socceritis. I'll let him spell that out for you. Uh, and he's also a co-host of the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. And you can find them at SATX Soccer. You can find them on Twitter again at SATX Soccer. Um, Coach, this has been great. Thank you for being on with us. Any last things? Any final plugs? Anything where we can find you? Anything you want to share with us?
Well, tomorrow, like I said, for the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable, we'll be on live tomorrow night at 7. So, like I said, we'll be on Twitter, we'll be on Facebook Live. You can send us some questions. We're going to be discussing the soccer playoffs from Region 4, just going the highlights, and also discussing San Antonio FC news. I know I think we signed a new player this week, and also they had a scrimmage with FC Dallas that they actually we're surprised that they televised on Facebook Live for that one.
Right.
So we got to see that, and then also coming a little discussions, hopefully on some of the lower level, for the amateur level soccer. We'll discuss dive into that a little bit as well. And then so we look forward to having more follows follow us on Twitter. That's like I said at SATX Soccer. Love to have you guys. We're very responsive and love to hear you guys comment on questions on our show.
Yeah, you all have been doing some great things for a long time, going all the way back to when my boy Scott, was exclusively, I think, producing the show, and started hosting the show, and then added to the team with you all, and I know with Royce the voice, right, on
Yeah.
there as well, and then I know you guys get Danielle, Miss Toes Wiggle on there as well. You all have always been great, going back to my San Antonio days when I was there. Uh, there in San Antonio, you all have been great, gracious to me and my program there before. So, and hopefully looking forward to having a program there again soon. For our listeners that may not be aware, I did announce this week that I will be stepping down from my role as head women's soccer coach here at Isleta High School here in El Paso, as my family and I, along with the 50/50 podcast, we're headed about 500 and something miles southeast, I guess you could say, back to San Antonio. But yeah, I mean, we're excited, and looking forward to being able to collaborate with San Antonio Soccer Roundtable a lot more in the future. And excited. We're very excited. Not excited about leaving El Paso. Love this place. This is my hometown. This will always be my hometown. But this is something that's in the best interest for the family. So we're excited about that. So, Coach, thank you again for everything. We look forward.
Thank you.
Again, this is going to be a kind of a little multi-episode mini-series, I guess, if we want to call it, our Inside Texas High School Soccer, the state playoffs edition. So this will be episode 1. So thank you again, Coach. We look forward to having you on here again next weekend, where we'll cover both results from the area round as well as the regional quarterfinals, and then we'll start looking ahead. So thank you again. And for our listeners, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.